Thanks for having me here. So in contrast to Nick, who just gave you the vision, maybe some of the history and the future of cloud computing, I'm going to talk to you about reality. Yeah, what is going on right now? So Amazon and Amazon Web Services are, I like to believe, the dominant provider of infrastructure services. That means really at the lower level of the stack, where you get the pure utility, not the application level, not the fancy applications, and which may look more to you like outsourcing. No, really where we talk about, cloud computing as a utility. And so Amazon is the, one of the dominant providers there. And it's I hope that by now you know enough about press and stuff like that, that you know that we're playing there and what kind of services there are. So I'm not going to do the sales talk on this. What I really want to talk to you about is, why are customers or why are enterprises picking the cloud and for what reason? So we'll go through a range of our customers looking at, what is the kind of motivations. Before that, I want to do a bit of an intro around Amazon, why actually we got into this business in the first place. Why it was a sort of a natural evolution, why Amazon ended up here. Let's skip that one. So, but first of all, I want to dispel a myth. Namely, that Amazon is just selling off excess capacity. Yeah? That we're just shifting off our garbage to you guys to use while we're not using it. And that when Christmas comes around, and actually Amazon has a bigger than expected Christmas, which is almost every year, you will be out of luck. This is not the case. We entered into this utility business as a business by itself, because we believe there's a huge opportunity there, not only from a business perspective, but also because Amazon has unique technologies in terms of scale and reliability that we can exploit as a very low-cost, high-volume business. This is what Amazon is good in. Yeah? We have our roots in retail. We know how to do a very low-cost, high-volume business. And that is what the utility business in reality is. And especially at the infrastructure level, things need to be cheap, and as cheap as possible. And Amazon is really good at that. So, no, we're not shifting our garbage to you. This is a business by itself that maybe one time be easily as big as our retail business is right now. So I'm often asked to give some sort of definition. What is cloud computing? Given that all the hype is out there, I think there's many different definitions out there. I kind of like the one that Gartner put out about a year ago. It's a style of computing where massively scalable IT-related capabilities are provided as a service across the internet, and the internet can be private or public, to multiple external customers. And the key points there are massively scalable IT-related capabilities as a service, and across the internet, multiple customers. But I do think that actually this definition misses two absolutely essential points about cloud computing. Yeah? These services resources need to be available in a pure on-demand fashion. You need to be able to acquire them whenever you need them. And when you no longer need them, you need to be able to release them instantly. You do not hold nor the resources, nor the capital or the operational expense associated with it when you are not using the resources. Yeah? So on-demand is an essential part of cloud computing. And the second point which this definition is missing is that it needs to be a pay-as-you-go model. It needs to follow the true utility model that you only pay for those resources that you really use. So those two things actually, if you look at many of the benefits that cloud computing will bring you, are core there. Yeah? Which are not only the elimination of capital, but also the reduction in operational expense mainly come from the fact that you only use resources where you need them, and you do not pay for them when you do not use those resources. Now, Amazon has been in this business of providing these infrastructure services for more than 3 years now. We launched our first storage service in, I think it was spring of 2006. In August, we launched our compute environment called Amazon EC2, the Elastic Compute Cloud. 2 months later, Business Week puts Jeff on the front page, basically calling him crazy. Yeah? By now we know that if magazines that are no longer in business start calling our CEO crazy, we're on a very good path. Yes? We're still called Amazon Web Services, and they are called what? Good. No, but it's kind of an indication that maybe 3 years ago, this may have looked like a risky bet, where Amazon was clearly the innovator for the kind of technologies that we had developed. But there were things going on, I think, in a larger sort of economic setting that kind of predate this, both economically as well as technology-wise. Economic, I think, the increasing competition, the shortening timelines that products have to be built across, and we heard earlier already about the power of the consumer basically deciding whether or not your products are going to be successful, brings enormous uncertainty to the market. You do not know beforehand whether your products are going to be successful or not. Maybe 10 years ago you could predict that. Now that model is gone. Yeah? And for that you need new resource models. And it's essential that you're able to acquire and release resources on demand and actually use other core competencies to actually work on those pieces of your business that do not differentiate yourself from your competitors. So for Amazon internally, we had many of these examples actually. So Amazon, if you may, yeah, there is an elephant in the room here. If you look at Amazon's history, we have a history of building platforms. Maybe you all know us as, I hope you're all retail customers of ours. Are there any is there somebody that's not an Amazon customer? Can I talk to you later? Yeah. So all of Amazon has been in the platform business for a long time. Yeah, so we allowed others to sell on the Amazon platform, as we also built a very large enterprise e-commerce services platform. That happened about 10 years ago when we realized that to actually get additional economies of scale that would allow us to reduce cost and then with that lower our retail pricing, we needed to get way beyond the scale of Amazon itself. And for that we built an e-commerce platform, complete service-oriented architecture, on which some of the world's largest e-commerce operations run. Not just Amazon, but for example Target.com, or here in the UK, Marks & Spencer's, Mothercare, and all of those even may have functionality that Amazon itself doesn't have, like multi-channel, in-store terminals, and things like that. All of that runs over Amazon technology. But it allows us to get to a scale that is way beyond what Amazon.com, which is already a significant operation, actually needs. So with all of our innovation and all of our work, we went through sort of a traditional enterprise architecture evolution pattern. Lots of redundant operations going on, lots of redundant innovation going on, because many of our engineers were given very complex tasks, namely to be able to reach a level of reliability that was not seen before. We should be able to lose a complete data center, and the performance towards the customer should not be affected. We should be able to lose 2 data centers, and maybe the performance to the customer could be affected, but the functionality should still be there. And that means that all the engineers were actually working on similar problems. Instead of that, they were all working on building better products for our customers. About 70% of the time, they were actually working on infrastructure matters. And they were all working on some similar problems. Now, it's a traditional pattern that you actually then take a one-moment stock and drop these sort of redundant development that's going on into a shared services platform. See, this is sort of a complement to Nick's earlier pictures. This is from a brewery in Belgium, where they actually kept a generator around that they were using at the beginning of this century. But it must be obvious, very obvious to everyone that having a generator does not make you brew better beer. Yeah? They just need it. It's just the cost of doing business. And we were following a similar pattern in that most of our engineers were concerned with things that was just the cost of doing business. And with this new shared services platform, we could highly optimize that and allow engineers to start brewing better beer. Yeah? So there are 4 principles around it that were essential. Yeah? One of them, that this stuff needs to be able to scale up and down in order of minutes. We had a history actually where engineers, and we were really good at this, if they would ask for server capacity, they would get this within a matter of hours. 4 to 5 hours would get you a completely provisioned server if you would ask for it. However, that time frame is not sufficient to incent engineers to also release that capacity again when they no longer need it. And it turns out that they were actually hoarding capacity with the idea, well, just in case you would need it. And by shifting this allocation of capacity and this into a matter of minutes, this virtual capacity, we see the right behavior starting to happen. You're able to access capacity or request as much capacity as you need in a matter of minutes and then release it when you no longer need it. And we see then that also, and that's one of the things that I also see happening with many of our customers, is that the moment they move to this model, they increase the level of automation that goes with it. Many processes that may have been hand managed before, if you can do it at this level through a complete automated API, you can automate the hell out of it. And with that, achieve levels of efficiency that we're not able to reach before. Other point was that we really thought that this should be a low-cost, utility-grade business approach. Yeah? So only pay for that what you use. Of course, given that many people are going to build their business on top of this Amazon infrastructure, and Amazon itself runs on top of it as well, reliability is one of the top priorities, as is security. Given that we are providing these services at the infrastructure level, more than thinking about privacy and end-to-end security, for us it was important that we would build into this layer many different security technologies that our customers could be able to use to build their own security tools, or to get to map between their policy controls and the activities that you need to take at the lower layers. Now this is the set of services. You can go to aws.amazon.com and you can find more about them. They're really rooted in compute and storage with a range of other services surrounding that. But let's skip that mainly. One thing that I do want to sort of emphasize, and especially because this technology was launched specifically for our enterprise customers, was that one of the feedback that we'd gotten from customers was that, oh, the public cloud is great. We really love that. However, I've already invested an enormous amount of effort into having my own policy mechanisms, my own management tools, and all of those work well in my data center. They don't work that well if I have to include the public cloud into it. So we developed a technology called Amazon's Virtual Private Cloud, which allows you to wall off a piece of the cloud, give it your own network addressing mechanisms, and then connect that back to your data center, making it look as if this piece of the cloud is part of your data center. And you can then start putting any of our compute units in there. You can make it scalable as much as you want to. But this is specifically targeted towards customers that already have existing data center infrastructure and then are able to build that out seamlessly into the cloud without losing the ability to still use your standard management tools. So there's actually 4 points which I want to emphasize on the advantages of moving to the cloud. So most of these are sort of feedback from our customers, to different reasons why customers picked moving to the cloud. One of them is, of course, the cost advantage. It eliminates capital, as well as reduces operational costs because you only pay for those resources that you really use. But remember, if cost is your only concern, everything looks like an expense. It doesn't drive innovation. And what I hear actually from many of our enterprise customers is that although they like the cost picture, the agility side of things is much more important. The fact that this allows you to think about resources without that you have to allocate them up front. Without to think about that, these are actually constrained resources. No, there are no longer constraints on the amount of compute or storage that you can use for any new product or existing product that you want to move into. Time to market, the reduction of that time to market is an essential driver for customers moving to the cloud. Actually, can I go back that slide still? Thanks. The other heavy lifting, I think that comes sort of, it's obvious because most of the utility part addresses that, but also many customers are picking this as a foundation for new architectures. Yeah? The IDC study was mentioned earlier about what percentage of existing IT would move to the cloud. The more progressive part, I think, the more indicating part of that study was that the expectation was that about 50% of new IT would start off in the cloud instead of just doing the lift and shift of moving old IT to the cloud. So adoption is kind of like this. We're now at, earlier this year was 52 billion objects in Amazon S3. That's a storage service. We're now 82. That I expect we easily are doubling, more than doubling year over year the amount of storage that our customers are using there. So while Amazon, when we started off, we really had the idea that these may be more targeted towards younger businesses. We have to be honest about that. We really thought that the businesses that would be looking at innovation would be the ones that would be jumping on board quickly. And that was kind of the case. Startups were clearly our earliest customers. It took, however, only a few months after the launch of Amazon EC2, our compute units, before enterprises started realizing that this was gold. And after that, more or less a few months after the launch of EC2, enterprises have been the major users of the Amazon cloud ever since. Yeah, and the early adopters were clearly those that already knew how to use these large compute resources, oil, pharma, financials, clearly knew what to do with large compute units that they could extend their own world with. Many of our partners came on board quickly as well. You can get enterprise Linux from these kind of customers, fully supported databases. All of this software is reality now with licensing models that also address the cloud. Although there's a difference in licensing model. I think many companies, although they're thinking about cloud software, moving their software to the cloud, I think there's still a lot of work to be done around making sure that licensing models actually work for customers as well. I think in this case, IBM has done a great job in that they allow you to develop inside the cloud with their technologies for free. The moment you go into production, you have two choices. You either get a per hour surcharge on top of the Amazon costs that you get. Let's say normally Amazon cost is 10 cents per hour, and in that case it would maybe be 12 cents or 14 cents per hour, depending on the sort of software that you run. Or you can take some of the internal IBM licenses, and they provide a conversion table to go into the cloud. The services in the traditional servers middleware infra ecosystem is also interesting. Here you see many of the traditional enterprise software vendors. BMC recently launched the integration of the Amazon services in all of their management software. And that's traditional. TIBCO took the other approach. Instead of converting their older middleware software to the cloud, they decided to build a completely new platform, really targeted towards new scalable IT running in the cloud. And I put the other ones up. They're more or less also platform players. The reason why I put them up there is that there's often the notion that if you go up in the stack, if you go towards a platform approach, you automatically get locked into the cloud. Well, for example, a company like Stacks gives you standard J2EE services in the cloud. If you have applications that are built against strict J2EE, you can immediately move them in the cloud by using container technology like this and get then this automatic scaling over these AWS instances. Another player there, for example, is Spring and Spring Source with their Java technologies. Many of the SIs have jumped on board immediately. They provide all sorts of services in helping enterprise customers evaluate what applications within your organization are suitable for moving to the cloud. All of these now have a cloud practice as well. Here's a number of the examples of customers. The one on the left-hand corner is the NASDAQ. They had the idea about building a new application that would actually allow their customers to analyze market data. Although they thought there was a market there, they didn't know for sure, but to be able to allow it, they would have to retool their backend and invest millions and millions of dollars in that retooling of the backend would take maybe a year or two before they could do this. Instead, they took a very simple approach by just dumping all market data into the Amazon storage service and then build a Flash application that would access that data. Now, if this application would not have been successful, they would have been out of pocket a bit money for the developers of the Flash application, but they clearly didn't run the risk of investing a lot of capital into their backend to get these things done. The other example there is Forbes running real-time stock quotes out of New York over this platform as well. Some companies picking us for time to market. In this case, it's I put up the example of The Guardian when they put up all the materials of the MPs here, and they invited their customers actually to come and mark up the expense reports. They immediately realized that they could not do that on their own platform because there was an expectation that many of their readers would show up. And so they went and did it on our platform. Build is another story. Build wanted to go into the market of video citizen journalism. They went to their own IT department, asked how long it would take to get the site up. IT department said 8 to 12 months. That was clearly something after which such an internet idea is dead in the water. They went with the Amazon services, with cloud services, and 4 weeks later, they're up and running. But also because it allows you to iterate quickly on ideas that you have. You may have this idea, 4 weeks later you have a sort of a minimal site out there, and then you start iterating on that. Internet scaling is another reason why many of the customers actually move to the cloud. The top example is one that I like very much, is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. If you're into cars, or even if you're not into cars, if you're into internet applications, you should visit this website when one of those races is going on. They have a massive Flash application, 8 video streams running parallel. You can pick them from which cockpit you want to get the view. And then, all sorts of biometric data and things like that. Really an absolutely cool application. As you can imagine, millions of people come to use that application. Unfortunately, it only runs 3 times a year. So how do you allocate capacity for that? How do you prepare for that? Playfish is a UK-based company, becoming quickly one of the largest gaming companies in the world. They built for the Facebook platform, and they already demonstrated that if you build for social networking, you have to build for success. Yeah, maybe in the past, your nightmare was I throw a party, nobody shows up. Now the nightmare is I throw a party and everybody shows up. Yeah? One of the latest games, Restaurant City, they estimated that within 2 weeks they would have 150,000 concurrent users, turned out to be 8 million. Yeah? And I think the largest game runs something like 16 million concurrent users. And so you have to be prepared, and we see this actually, if you look at many of the new marketing campaigns that are being built, there will be some marketing. Often it will include video, marketing will include integration into social networks, it will include gaming, all of these kind of things. You need to run at a scale that only the internet can provide you. Traditional enterprise computing here, picked to Eli Lilly and Pfizer. Eli Lilly uses the cloud to do collaborative drug trials. Pfizer does traditional protein docking. They use, about 500 nodes at a time. Eli Lilly stamps out multiple 64-node clusters in the cloud to do this collaboration. Pfizer uses VPC, so they hold it within their own data center environment, even though it sits in the cloud. Eli Lilly, because it's a collaborative effort, specifically puts these things out in the cloud, in the public cloud, and then allows data to flow back to their own data centers. On this one, I want to pick out actually Netflix. As you may know, Netflix is a competitor of Amazon. We both play in the video on demand business. And though I heard earlier on that someone still uses DVD players, Reed Hastings gave a presentation about 2 weeks ago, an interview to Forbes, where he predicted that within 2 years, video on demand within Netflix would overtake the DVD business. Yeah, and so DVD business is going out, video on demand is moving. The reason for Netflix moving onto the Amazon cloud was for reliability purposes. They had a number of scaling issues, had some outages. They looked around what was best in class for infrastructure services, ended up with Amazon. Probably had to swallow a little bit when that name came to the top, but decided to go with Amazon and with these services because the scale of this and the reliability is clearly without any doubt. Some customers pick us for security reasons, and during the panel, I'm sure if we're going to take questions from you, I'm happy to dive deeper into that. Customers can get any of the security clearances that they require. In this case, they're healthcare companies, HIPAA certified. Folks pick it for other reasons, lower operational costs. In this case, Intuit with TurboTax wanted to make sure that on April 15 in the US, there's this moment that all consumers have to fill in their tax forms. They needed to be able to be ready for that scale. They used Amazon for that. Fire up 2,000 instances, emulate 200,000 browsers hitting your site at the same time. SAP moves all of their code into the cloud at night in our cloud to test it there. Many different reasons. Companies enter the cloud not only for the number of benefits that you've seen, but also because cloud is a marketplace for reselling your services. Many of the telcos are thinking about how to actually resell and how to repurpose their IP to actually leverage in the cloud and to allow others to leverage in the cloud as well. That said, this is still day one. This is disruptive technology. The way that it will impact enterprises and the way that we will see massive innovation happening on top of this, there's still a long way to go. That also means that probably you're going to later on ask me for predictions, how the world is going to look like. That'll cost you 10 cents. Yeah? And I'll give you any answer, and probably maybe if you ask this guy, you will get a more reliable answer than asking me. Yeah? I think we will see at the infrastructure level certainly a number of providers arising over time. I think these will be the 5 different things in which these providers will be compared. I like to believe some of these are absolutely 100% must. You must match the 100% level. There's only 100% security, there's nothing else. But maybe you're willing to sacrifice some scalability for some cost effectiveness, or maybe you're willing to pay less if sometimes providers are allowed to lose your data. Yeah, that was a joke only for insiders, actually. So these are, I think the matrix will exist over time. And this is also how IT jobs will change over time. I think managing your providers will actually be essential there. This is how so many changes will happen around these 4 or 5 different properties. Yeah? That said, all you need, given that it's a complete self-service, not pay-as-you-go model, the only thing you need is this URL and a credit card. Thank you.